Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning to the respective panels, Sir Shahril Ishaq Ismail and Sir Muhammad Bastian Mahmud. Today we would like to present our final year project, a study on the satisfaction on the effectiveness of online education towards students in Uitm Seremban 3. So I am Nur Syafiqah binti Sali and my partner is Nur Atika Sarah binti Roslan and our supervisor is Dr. Arif Aizuddin Azlan.
First and foremost, I will introduce our research background. According to Current 2008, online education is a process whereby students and professors communicate, interact through technological development. The platform of online education became wider during pandemic of COVID-19. The dependent variable in this study is the satisfaction towards the effective of online education, and the factors influence the satisfaction includes the individual factor, technology factor, and probability of obstacles or problem arise during online education. Therefore, the main aim of this study was to examine the satisfaction on the effectiveness of online education towards students in Uitm Seremban.
Next, we're moving on to the problem statement. As a student, we want to make education more efficient. So there must also be a fair framework to make learning more effective and comprehensive. There are many factors that help the online training more efficient. In addition, the quality of online learning is hampered by the problem, so it needs to be focuses on identifying the factors that could improve the online education towards students. Therefore, this research focuses on the factors that influence the satisfaction, on the effectiveness of online education, for instance, the individual motivation, the technology approach, and the obstacle that will affect the learning. So next, this is our research objective and research questions. Our first research objective is to examine the relationship among the individual factors and the satisfaction on online education. The second is to examine the relationship between the technology advancement and the satisfaction of online learning. The second is to examine the relationship between the obstacle factors and the satisfaction on online learning. And the last is to examine the dominance factor that influences satisfaction of online learning towards students in Uitm Seremban 3. Therefore, the research question is the reflection of our research objective.
So we move to the conceptual framework. We divide it into two variables, that is independent variables and dependent variables. Independent variables are divided into three factors, that is individual factor, technology factor, and problems or obstacles. And the dependent variables, we are using satisfaction on the online education. So based on the result, first factors, individual factors, HO1, there is significant relationship between individual factor and the satisfaction towards online education. And the result is there is significant relationship between individual factor and the satisfaction towards online education. Next factor is technological factors. HO2, there is an insignificant relationship between technology and advancement and the satisfaction towards online education. And the result is there is significant relationship between technology advancement and the satisfaction towards the education. And last, problems or obstacles. HO3, there is insignificant relationship between obstacles or problems and the satisfaction towards online education. And the result is there is significant relationship between obstacles and the satisfaction towards.
Next, we're moving on to the research methodology. There are research design, unit of analysis, sample size, sampling technique, data measurements, data collections, and also data analysis. The first research design, we are using the quantitative method, the cross-sectional sample surveys. The second is unit of analysis is the students in Uitm Seremban 3. The third is the sample size. We had 284 respondents from the students in Uitm Seremban 3. Sampling technique, basically we are using the convenience sampling in the non-probability methods. For data measurements using the linked scale, which is from 1 to 5. So the first is strongly disagree, the second is disagree, the third is neutral, the fourth is agree, and the fifth is the strongly agree. And then the data collection, basically we have 5 sections. The first is the demographic profile, section B is the individual factor, section C is the technology factor, section 4 is the problems or obstacles, and the section E is the satisfaction. And the last is data analysis. We are using descriptive statistic, mean, standard, and standard deviations, and also the percent correlation.
Okay, next we move to the findings. So we listed here a few lists of demographic and the percentage that we get from the research, such as gender, program, education, currency GPA, mode of assessing, availability of internet connection, or familiar with these tools of online education or of online learning. So here, for example, we got the result of mostly female students participate in this research, and next, mostly bachelor student participate in this research, and then most of them ownership of computer or laptop, and usually most of the students using laptop as their mode of accessing the online study. And then many of students and mostly of them familiar with the Microsoft Teams as their platform of online.
So next is the hypothesis testing. So for our first objective is to examine the relationship between the individual factor and the satisfactions by using the percent correlations. So our result has discovered that there is a significant relationship between the individual factors and the satisfaction, with the result R is equal 0.59 and P is equal 0.00. Therefore, HA1 was accepted and HO1 were rejected. Our second objective is to examine the relationship between the technology and the satisfactions using the percent correlations too. And the result is R is equal 0.63 and P is equal 0.00. So therefore, HA2 was accepted and HO2 were rejected. Our third objective is to examine the relationship between the obstacle factors and the satisfaction using the percent correlations too. So the result is R is equal negative 0.14 and P is equal 0.00. Therefore, HA3 was accepted and HO3 were rejected. Our fourth objective is to examine the dominant factor that influence the satisfactions using the multiple regression. So our first independent variable is 0.32, the second variable is 0.43, and the third is negative 0.14. So based on beta, the technology factor is the main factor that lead the satisfaction on the effectiveness of online education towards students.
And next, we move to the research recommendation. So this is a few recommendation that we as a researcher recommend for future online learning for the teachers and students. First is develop material which is usable for the student to enjoying online education. Next is to reconsider environment for online distance learning. Third is always communicate each other if there is any problem occur in the meantime, especially when there's having an obstacles for students during the online education. And lastly, utilizing technologies to conserve resources and times. Mostly we need to conserve the resources and time because it will lack we will lack
Next is the limitation of study and the future recommendation. We have 3 limitations of study. So for the first is weaknesses of the quantitative study. So basically, quantitative study, they have their own pros and their cons. So when we see on the cons, basically the answer of the quantitative is not in depth. So therefore, the future study are encouraged to employ the interview, the observation, the discussion that more in depth, so that we know the opinion, the suggestions by the respondents to improve. And then the second is limited sample. So basically, we are our sample is focuses on the students in Uitm Seremban 3. So for the future study, we might utilize this model to other sample. And then the third is limited model. So our study have 3 independence variables and only 1 dependence variable. So 3 dependence is include the individual, the technology, and the problems, while one dependence variable is the satisfaction. So therefore, for the future study, it should widen the model by including the many factors that could improve, that could increase the satisfactions towards the online educations.
So, last but not least, the conclusion. This research main aim was to examine the factors that lead to the satisfaction on the effectiveness of online education towards students. Based on the independent variables, the most dominant that influence the satisfaction to the online education is the technology advancement rather than the individual factor. And therefore, the research has contributed to the new knowledge in the current literature, and furthermore, it will gain benefits by knowing the most factors that contribute more towards online education for future. So that's all from us. Thank you.